I need to be very careful with what I am about to say because this is a topic that the modern world has turned into a battlefield, and I am not here to fight. I am not here to point fingers or place blame or take sides in a war that I don't believe should exist. I am here to tell the truth, the same way I have always told the truth calmly, slowly, from a place of love and not from a place of anger. And the truth is this: women have lost something, something essential, something that used to be the most powerful force on this earth, and they didn't lose it because someone took it from them. They lost it because the world convinced them it wasn't worth keeping. That is the part that nobody wants to hear. That is the part that will make some people stop listening right now. But if you stay, if you sit with me through the discomfort, I think you will understand what I mean. And I think it might change the way you see everything. In our tradition, women were sacred. And I don't use that word the way the modern world uses it. The modern world uses sacred to mean precious or delicate or something that needs to be protected behind glass. That is not what sacred means. Sacred means powerful. Sacred means essential. Sacred means the thing without which nothing else can exist. Women in our tradition were the center of everything. Not because men put them there, because the Creator put them there. Women carried the power of creation inside their bodies. They brought life into the world. They were the first home every human being ever knew. Before you knew the sky, before you knew the earth, before you knew your own name, you knew your mother. Her heartbeat was the first song you ever heard. Her body was the first world you ever lived in. That is power. That is sacred. And our people understood that this power was not something to be diminished or controlled or competed with. It was something to be honored, to be protected, to be allowed to do what it was designed to do. And what was it designed to do? It was designed to hold things together, not in a weak way, not in a submissive way, in the way that the earth holds things together, quietly, constantly, without asking for credit. The earth doesn't announce that it is holding you up. It just does it. Every moment of every day, without complaint, without recognition. And if the earth stopped, everything would fall. Everything. That is what women were. They were the gravity of the family, the gravity of the community, the invisible force that kept everything from flying apart. And when I say invisible, I don't mean unnoticed. I mean so constant, so reliable, so woven into the fabric of daily life that people forgot it was there, the way you forget about gravity until you fall. That is what has happened. Women stepped away from that role, and things started falling. And people are looking around wondering why everything feels unstable, why families are crumbling, why children are lost, why communities have no center, and they are blaming politics and technology and the economy and the hundred other things. But the truth, the deep truth that nobody wants to say out loud, is that the gravity shifted, the center moved, and nothing has found its balance since. Now, before you misunderstand me, let me be very clear about something. I am not saying women should go back to the kitchen. I am not saying women should be silent. I am not saying women should obey men or serve men or live smaller lives so that men can feel bigger. Any man who tells a woman to be less than what she is not a man. He is a coward, and our tradition would have no place for him. What I am saying is something much more specific than that. I am saying that the modern world offered women a trade, and the trade was not fair. The trade was this: give up the things that make you uniquely powerful as a woman, and in return, we will let you compete in a world that was built by men for men. Give up your softness, and we will give you a corner office. Give up your intuition, and we will give you a strategy meeting. Give up your connection to home and family, and the slow, sacred work of raising human beings. And we will give you a career that will consume you the same way it consumed your father, and leave you just as empty at the end. That was the trade. And millions of women took it, not because they were foolish, because they were brave, because the world they were living in had not been honoring them. The world had been telling them that their work at home didn't matter, that raising children was not a real job, that being a wife and a mother was settling for less, that the only way to be valuable was to earn money and accumulate power and climb the same ladder that men had been climbing and falling off of for generations. And women heard that message and they said, "Fine. If you won't honor what I do, I will do what you honor." And they went out into the world and they proved that they could do anything a man could do. And they were right. They can. They absolutely can. Women can run companies and lead nations and practice law and perform surgery and fly planes and do every single thing that a man can do. That was never in question. The question is whether doing all of those things was worth the price they paid to do them. And the price was this. They had to leave something behind. Not all of them, but many of them. They had to leave behind the part of themselves that the old world ran on, the part that held families together, the part that raised children not as a side project, but as a life's work, the part that kept the home as a sanctuary instead of a place you collapse into at the end of an 18-hour day, the part that knew how to be still, how to nurture, how to listen with the whole body, how to heal with presence alone. Those things were left behind. Not because women stopped being capable of them, because the world told them those things were beneath them. And that is the lie. That is the great lie that broke everything. Before I share the next teaching, one quick thing. Everything I have been pulling out of these old ways, the teachings about what happened to men, about why happiness disappeared, about the lies that were sold to all of us, I have written it all down. 20 teachings, 4 parts, in the order they were meant to be received. It is called The Native Way. Link is in the description of the video. But stay right here because what I am about to say next is the part that people tell me stays with them the longest. There is nothing beneath a woman who chooses to raise her children with her full attention. There is nothing small about a woman who makes her home a place of peace and warmth and safety. There is nothing weak about a woman who chooses softness in a world that rewards hardness. These are not lesser choices. These are the choices that built every civilization that has ever lasted. Every single one. Show me a civilization that honored its mothers, and I will show you a civilization that endured. Show me a civilization that told its women their natural gifts were worthless, and I will show you a civilization that is crumbling. And we are crumbling right now in real time. We are watching it happen and blaming everything except the thing that actually changed. I want to be careful here because I know there are women listening to this who chose careers and are wonderful mothers at the same time. And I honor you. I see how hard you work. I see the impossible balancing act you perform every single day, waking up before the sun to pack lunches, working 8 hours at a job that demands everything, coming home exhausted and still finding the energy to help with homework and cook dinner and read bedtime stories and be present for a family that needs you. You are not the problem. You are a miracle. The problem is a world that forces you to do the work of 3 people and then tells you that you should be grateful for the opportunity. The problem is a world that took the role of the mother, the most important role in any civilization, and decided it wasn't enough. That it needed to be combined with a career and a social life, and a perfect body, and a clean house, and a happy marriage, and 1,000 other demands that no human being, man or woman, could ever meet all at once. The problem is not women. The problem is what the world did to womanhood. My grandmother was the strongest person I have ever known, stronger than any man I have met before or since. She raised 7 children. She kept a home that was always warm, always clean, always full of food and laughter and the smell of something cooking. She knew every plant within walking distance of our home and what it could heal. She could look at a person and know what they were feeling before they said a word. She could settle an argument between 2 grown men with a single sentence. She could hold a crying child and make the whole world disappear until all that was left was safety. She did all of this without a paycheck, without a title, without a single person ever calling her boss or director or CEO. And she was more powerful than any executive I have ever seen in a suit behind a desk. Because her power was real. It wasn't borrowed from a system. It wasn't dependent on a company's decision to keep her employed. It wasn't tied to a number in a bank account. Her power came from inside her, from her connection to the earth, from her understanding of what human beings actually need, not what the economy needs, what humans need. Love, presence, nourishment, safety, wisdom, a voice that says everything is going to be all right and means it. That was my grandmother's power. And the modern world would call her unemployed. That is the insult. That is the disrespect that started all of this. The world looked at women like my grandmother and said, "You are not enough. You need to be more. You need to do more. You need to earn more." And women, rightfully, were offended. But instead of rejecting the insult, they internalized it. They believed it. They said, "Okay, if what I am is not enough, I will become something else. And they became something else. They became competitors in a game they didn't design. They became warriors in a war they didn't start. They became hard where they used to be soft. They became loud where they used to be steady. They became busy where they used to be present. And the world applauded. The world said, "Look how far women have come." But my grandmother would look at the world today and she would not applaud. She would weep. Not because women have jobs. Not because women have power. But because the thing that made women the most powerful force on earth, their ability to create and sustain life in all its forms, has been downgraded to something you do on the side, something you squeeze in between meetings, something you outsource to daycare centers and after-school programs and screens that raise your children while you're at work raising someone else's profits. I want to talk about what this has done to children, because the children are the ones who pay the highest price. A child does not need a perfect mother. A child does not need a mother who has it all together. A child needs a mother who is there, present, in the room, in the moment, paying attention, not checking her phone, not thinking about the deadline, not exhausted beyond the ability to engage, just there. And there is becoming the rarest thing in a child's life. I see children being raised by institutions, by schools, by daycares, by screens, by algorithms that decide what they watch and what they think and who they become. And the mother, the one person who is supposed to be the first and most important influence in that child's life, is somewhere else. Not because she wants to be, because the world made it impossible for her to be anywhere else. Because one income isn't enough anymore. Because the cost of living swallowed the choice that women used to have. Because the system needs her labor just as much as it needs her husband's labor, and it doesn't care what happens to the children as long as both parents show up to work on Monday. That is the real crime. The real crime is not that women went to work. The real crime is that the world made it so that they had no choice. It took away the option of staying home by making it financially impossible, and then it celebrated the result as progress. Look, both parents are working now. How modern, how equal, how progressive. But there's a child in a daycare center at 6:30 in the morning watching the door, waiting for a face that won't appear for 12 more hours. And nobody calls that progress except the people who profit from it. I knew a woman named Patricia who told me something that I have never been able to forget. Patricia was a nurse. She worked 12-hour shifts at a hospital 3 days a week. And on those days, her daughter went to daycare from 6 o'clock in the morning until 7 o'clock at night. 13 hours. And Patricia told me that one evening she came to pick up her daughter, and the little girl ran to the daycare worker instead of to her. She ran to the daycare worker and wrapped her arms around her legs and said, "I don't want to go." And Patricia stood there in the doorway with her arms open, and her child chose someone else. Not because the child didn't love her mother, because the child had spent more waking hours with the daycare worker than with her own mother. And Patricia drove home that night and sat in the car in the driveway and cried for 30 minutes before she could walk through the door. She told me, "I am paying someone else to raise my daughter so that I can earn the money to pay them. That is the circle. That is the trap. That is the machine eating itself. And women like Patricia are caught inside it with no way out." I also want to say something about the relationship between mothers and daughters, because this is where the break is most visible. 40 years ago, a daughter learned how to be a woman by watching her mother. She watched her mother cook. She watched her mother sew. She watched her mother hold a baby and comfort a neighbor and manage a household and navigate a marriage. She learned not from a textbook, but from presence. From being in the same room as a woman who was living the full expression of womanhood every single day. And that education, that slow, invisible passing of knowledge from one generation to the next, it produced women who knew who they were, who didn't need the world to tell them their value because their mother had shown them. Today, that chain is broken. Not completely, but badly. Mothers are too busy to model. Daughters are too distracted to watch. And the gap between them is being filled by the internet, by influencers who have never raised a child telling young women how to live, by algorithms that reward outrage over wisdom, by a culture that measures a woman's worth in followers and likes and how much skin she shows on a screen. And the grandmothers, the ones who hold the real knowledge, the ones who could bridge the gap if anyone would let them, are sitting in quiet houses being ignored. The chain of feminine wisdom that kept families strong for 1,000 generations is rusting and nobody is oiling it. I also want to talk about what women lost inside themselves because the external changes are obvious. The careers, the independence, the financial power. But there is an internal change that is harder to see and harder to talk about. Women were told that their feminine qualities were weaknesses. Softness was weakness. Emotional openness was weakness. The desire to nurture was weakness. The instinct to put relationships before achievements was weakness. And women, being smart and adaptable and responsive to the world around them, learned to suppress those qualities. They learned to be tough, to be competitive, to detach from their emotions in the workplace, to prioritize output over connection, to measure their worth in the same currency that men had always used: productivity, income, status. And in doing so, they became very successful by the world's definition of success. But many of them also became disconnected from the very things that used to give their lives meaning. The deep friendships that women used to build, the long conversations over coffee that lasted 3 hours and solved nothing but healed everything, the bond between mothers and daughters that used to pass wisdom down through generations like water flowing from one vessel to the next. Those things have thinned, not disappeared but thinned, because the world doesn't leave time for them anymore. The world is too fast, too demanding, too full of things that need to be done right now. My grandmother had a saying. She said, "A woman who forgets how to be still will forget how to hear the earth." And the earth has been talking to women since the beginning. The cycles of the moon, the rhythm of the seasons, the pulse of growth and rest and growth again. Women were connected to those rhythms in a way that men never were. It was their gift, their birthright. And the modern world, with its fluorescent lights and 24-hour news cycles and constant notifications, has drowned out that connection. It has replaced the rhythm of the earth with the rhythm of the economy. And the economy has no seasons. It doesn't rest. It doesn't cycle. It just takes constantly, endlessly. And it expects you to keep up. And if you can't keep up, it replaces you with someone who can. I don't have a solution that fits in a sentence. I don't have a slogan that will fix what took decades to break. But I will say this: the way back is not backward. The way back is inward. Women don't need to return to the 1950s. They need to return to themselves, to the part of themselves that knows what matters without being told, to the part that can feel the truth before the mind has time to argue with it, to the part that understands that creating a life, whether that means a child or a home or a friendship or a moment of peace in a chaotic world, is the most valuable thing a human being can do. Not the most profitable, the most valuable. There is a difference, and that difference is the distance between the world we have and the world we lost. I want to speak directly to the women listening right now. Whether you are a mother or not, whether you work or stay home, whether you are 25 or 75, you do not have to choose between strength and softness. That is a false choice that the world presented to you, and it was wrong. You can be both. You were always both. The strongest women I have ever known were the softest. My grandmother could hold a dying bird in her hands with a tenderness that would break your heart, and in the same hour stand in front of a council of men and speak truth with a voice that shook the room. She didn't choose between those two things. They were the same thing. They were both her power. And that power is inside you too. It never left. It is just buried under decades of being told that you need to pick a lane. You don't. You are the whole road. Every lane belongs to you, and I want to speak to the men as well, because men have a role in this that they are not fulfilling. If you are a man and you have a woman in your life, a wife, a mother, a daughter, a sister, your job is not to tell her what to be. Your job is to honor what she already is, to make space for her softness instead of punishing it, to value her presence instead of measuring her productivity, to see her not as a competitor but as a complement, the two halves of the same whole. My grandfather never once told my grandmother to be more or less than what she was. He simply stood beside her and made sure the world gave her room to be everything. That is what a man does. He doesn't lead the woman. He clears the path so she can walk it in her own way at her own pace, carrying whatever she chooses to carry. And if more men understood that, fewer women would have felt the need to become something they were not in order to survive in a world that wasn't built for them. If what you heard today stayed with you, the book is there. The Native Way, 20 teachings, 100 pages, written the way I would speak to you if we were sitting together. Link is in the description of the video. Read one chapter. Sit with it. Now I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, what is one thing about womanhood that you think the modern world got wrong? I read every comment. And if this is the kind of conversation you have been looking for, subscribe to this channel. We are not collecting viewers here. We are collecting people who remember. Come back next week. I am not done teaching yet.